What's up, everybody? Vegetarian Rednut coming at you here from an underground bunker, a secret underground bunker somewhere here in Montana. And just wanted to talk about a few things. Namely, the first thing that we're going to talk about is bear safety, how to be safe in the woods. And right now it's hunting season in Montana, and we are experiencing a high volume of bear sightings in Montana. In fact, we just had a fairly serious bear attack in Wyoming and a few close calls here in Montana, so I'm told. But so there's a controversy between pepper spray and a firearm. Which one is more effective? Which one should you carry? Should you have both? And I'm going to break it down for you today. Now, to give you a little background on who I am and what my experience with bears is when I was a kid, I'm talking 18, 19 years old, I worked for several different guide outfits that used to hunt bear. And so these were black bear in California. We used to be able to hunt those with hound dogs back in the day, and we would run them up a tree, and we would go to the tree and we would shoot them, and we would drag them back to the truck, whatever. Anyways, so um, would run across a lot of these clients that couldn't quite make it to the tree because they were overweight, obese, whatever, and they couldn't make it to the tree. So they would always give me their gun. I was young, I was fit. Heck, I was extremely fit. I could run up these hills like nobody's business. And they would give me their gun. They always wanted me to shoot the bear with their gun for whatever reason that is. But I would take their gun and I would run up the hills or down the hills or wherever it was through the brush, through the very thick brush oftentimes, and I would shoot the animal and kill it, and then I would drag it or dress it up if it was too large to drag it, and we would take it back, and they would get their pictures taken of their proudly, of their trophy. And then, of course, we would take their skin and we would send it to the taxidermist, and we would process all their meat for them, and then we'd give it to them, and, so on and so forth. Well, so that gave me a lot of experience in hunting bear, and what it would do everything in its power to get away. You would run across that bear occasionally that would try to come after you, and that happened to me one day. And this bear was an unusual bear from the beginning. We had put the dogs on it, and it had run all of our usual dogs back to the truck. Okay, this bear was not able to climb a tree. Sometimes they get too big, even though they're black bears. They get too big to climb a tree, and so it wanted to stay on the ground, and it wanted to fight the dogs. So it sent all the dogs back to the truck. These dogs weren't really all that gritty. Well, we did have a gritty dog, and his name was Savage Sam. As you can imagine, he was a big Walker hound, big black and white and tan dog on loan from another hunter that wanted us to give his dog some exercise. Now, Savage Sam was old. He was probably 12 or 14 years old at the time. And if you know anything about dogs, especially hound dogs, that's a very old dog. He was gray around the muzzle. He was a little crotchety, had a little arthritis. But this dog was as game as they get. And we turned Savage Sam loose, and down he went down this hill. And we could hear him barking, and he had like this chop mouth, what you call a chop mouth. He go, oh, 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 oh. Some hounds would have what they call ball mouth. Oh, oh, and they'd make these different noises. So you'd always know where Savage Sam was because he was chopping away on this bear. And then you could tell when he was caught up to the bear and when he started to fight this bear, because then you'd hear his intensity, and then you'd hear the dog get quiet, and then you'd hear him start barking, and you'd hear him get quiet, and you knew something was going on down there. Well, they said, all right, Carrot Top. That's what they called me back in the day. They handed me the 44 Magnum Super Red Hawk, and it was kind of a brand new gun back then. Let me see, what year was this? This would have been 1989 or 1988, probably 1988, possibly even 1987. My recollection on it is not 100% clear, but at any rate, I was a young man and full of vinegar and salt, as you can imagine. I wasn't one of these couch potato kids that sit and play video games all day long. Hell, I'm a YouTuber now. I'm getting fatter and all get out, and I'm completely out of shape. But back in them days, I wasn't. And so they handed me this Ruger Red Hawk, Super Red Hawk, and they said, Carrot Top, here's a whole bunch of bullets, and they handed me a handful of bullets. Unbeknownst to me, half of them were 44 specials. If you guys know anything about guns, there's the 44 Magnum and their 44 special, just kind of akin to a 38 special versus a 357 Magnum. It's a lower powered round, and as opposed to the full house 44 Magnum rounds. So, but I didn't care. They were bullets. I stuffed them in my pockets, and I took off down the hill. And this brush was so thick that it began to tear at my clothes. It was manzanita brush, and I was just climbing over top of it. I'm going underneath it. I'm pulling this brush to, from side to side, and I'm getting through this brush. Well, I must have hiked forever going down this hill. It was extremely steep, but you just couldn't get through it. There was so much brush, and my shirt's all tattered, and I'm all scratched up from this manzanita and everything else, but I'm just powering my way through it to get to all this commotion that you could hear going on down there. And I must have went a good 3 or 4 miles. And this was in the mountains of above a little town called Springville, California. And so and there was this one road that you would go, so when you're in Springville, the road forks. You can go up the South Fork Tule, or you can go up the North Fork Tule. If I recall, this was up the North Fork Tule, and them two roads wide out like this. Well, at the top of the one road, you could actually hike all at one point. You could come out to this one area. You could hike all the way down to the other road, and that's where this was kind of located. Let me lower my quality. Oh, I cannot. Yeah, I forgot to do that, folks. I'm streaming in 1080p. There might be some interruptions. I try not to do that, but be it as it may, we'll continue on. So that's about where I was at as far as location, and I was about halfway between one road and the other. It was about a 3 or 4 mile hike, and about an hour and a half or 2 hours later, I was able to arrive, somewhat tattered. And when I did arrive, I couldn't see the bear. I could hear it. It was very, very close, but there was so much brush that I just couldn't get my eyes on this thing. But finally, I saw it, and it was sitting there. I could see it in a little opening in the brush. I could see its head, and it was standing. It was just sitting down, and it was chomping its jaws like that, and at the dog, because the dog was arr, 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 just wouldn't leave this bear alone, right? And that's what the dog is supposed to do. That's what you call baying a bear, and they would hold, whenever you're baying a bear, whenever the dogs would bay a bear, they would hold it on the ground, either that or they would tree it. They would either be bayed up or it'd be treed. And so this particular bear was bayed up. It was too big to leveled it off, looked carefully through my sights, and squeezed my first round off. Bam! Man, that son of a bitch was loud. Man, I'm not even kidding. That sucker was so loud, I could just hear my ears ringing. But the bear drops. Oh, man, I got it. All right. So I'm starting to climb over this brush, and I'm only a few yards away from this bear, right? And I get to this point where there's this opening, and I'm looking over the top of the opening, and I kind of roll over the top of the brush and fall down into this opening, and I fall about 1.5 feet away from this bear's face, and this bear is very much still alive, and this thing rears up, and I about shit myself. I jumped up like a cat, and I just bounced onto my feet, and I still had my gun in my hand. I never let go of that, and I fired all the rest of the 5 rounds at it, and wouldn't you know it, I missed every single time. I was only a couple feet away, but I was in complete panic mode. The adrenaline shot to my brain, and I wasn't even able to think about what I was doing. Well, now I had to reload, and this thing was bawling its head off, and in my mind, this bear was like coming at me hard, right? In this little clearing that there was no way out of. I mean, it was just like a little ring of stomped down brush where this dog and this bear had been fighting and just going around and around and around for hours until they just pulverized everything within probably a 20-foot diameter circle. And here I'm in this circle with this bear. The dog is somewhere. I must have heard the shot. The dog took off. I don't know what happened to the dog. I don't remember seeing the dog at that point. But at any rate, here I am, and I'm trying to reload this gun. Well, I reach down into my pocket and I'm starting to try and put bullets in this cylinder of this gun, and they're falling on the ground, and one would kind of go like this and then would fall over, and my hands wouldn't work. My brain wouldn't work. I'm seeing tunnel vision. This thing's bawling its head off. I'm freaking out. I'm going, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And I keep throwing bullets at this cylinder. All I had to do was slow down and take my time and just put a bullet in there, and it just wouldn't work. By God, it just wouldn't work. But eventually I would get 2 or 3 bullets in there, and I would snap the cylinder shut, and I would take a couple more shots. Well, I'd miss again, and this thing just never quit bawling, and it was raised up on its head, and it looked like it was going to get up and just come after me. And so I'd go through the whole motion again. I'd take some more bullets and I'd throw them at the cylinder, and 1 or 2 would spin down in there, and I'd snap it shut. Click, 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 bam, bam. And I don't know how long it took me. You know, with all that adrenaline, there's just no way to tell. But eventually I managed to hit the bear correctly, and it succumbed to the withering gunfire that I was launching at it. Well, it was finally dead. It took me about a good 15 minutes to settle the hell down, where I could focus and see what was going on. I had bullet holes through this bear's paws. I had bullet holes all over this damn thing. And but it was dead. Thank God it was dead. And afterwards, when we were skinning the bear, the first shot, thankfully, had hit a vital, it had actually paralyzed the bear. I'd have got it right through the neck, and it was still fully functional from the neck up, where it was able to lift its head up and bawl its head off, but it wasn't able to actually get up and get me, which I'm really certain that it probably would have had I made a lesser of a shot. But so what did I take away from all this? Well, the first thing is panic and adrenaline can really work against you. It can wreak havoc on your ability to think straight and to make good decisions, and your motor functions diminish drastically. And so I've committed myself ever since that event took place to be able to control my adrenaline, and even learned some exercises to do when you have an adrenaline dump like that. But neither here nor there. We're talking about bear attacks and what happens if a bear attacks you. Well, there's a lot of controversy on this pepper spray versus firearms. And I got to say, how many police videos have you guys watched where a guy will get sprayed with pepper spray? Now, I'm told, I don't know if this is true or not. Maybe you guys will know if this is true, but I'm told that pepper spray that the police use is far more effective than the pepper spray that you use for bears, and I've seen criminals get sprayed with this, and seemingly it doesn't even affect them in the least. So what is the takeaway from this? Bears are big, tough animals, and they're very determined. They have a determination, an animalistic determination, unlike humans. And they don't operate like humans. They're tougher than humans. They have more focus when they're in attack mode, or when they're in the fight or flight mode. They're hyper focused on what they're doing. And the pepper spray, to me, is not a reliable enough method to be able to stop a bear, from my experience. Now, we didn't have pepper spray back in those days. We would have never tried to use it anyways, even had we did have it. But the point of what I'm trying to get at is that I wouldn't trust my life with pepper spray. And in fact, if we go to, let me see, I gotta See this guy right here. Let me pop up the screen. Just give me 1 second. I don't know if you guys recognize this guy, but he was in Ennis, Montana. This guy had gotten mauled by a grizzly bear several times, sprayed the bear several times. There's a big chunk of meat hanging off his arm, still bleeding. This guy was pretty tough. I got to hand it to him. He got mauled pretty damn good. He still hiked 3 miles out. But he had a pistol with him, and this is what blows my mind. This guy, he feels like the pepper spray did something, but then the bear came back and really got him good. And so, but he made it out alive. So I guess, I can't criticize the guy too badly. And the point of what I'm trying to say is here is a shining example of the pepper spray just not working. Let me see. I'm looking for a different one here. So this is a recent attack that took place in Wyoming. You guys may or may not remember this or have seen it, but the guy in the hospital bed was a friend that he actually was kind of a hero. He took a bear on single-handedly because his friend was attacked first, and so he jumped on this bear and he began to hit it and do whatever he could to try and dissuade. See, the man with the cast was the first one that got attacked, and then his buddy that was in the hospital bed there, he jumps on the bear, and he and then a couple of his other buddies came along to dissuade this bear, and thank goodness there was multiple kids, and these guys were braver than brave, and they did what they had to do, and the guy suffered some cuts and bruises, but it looks like he's going to be okay. And but what lesson can we learn from this? Because if you're walking out in the woods, and these guys were apparently looking for antlers, it's kind of a thing around here, where you find the antlers laying around, and you can pick them up, and then you can redeem them or sell them somehow, and you can get real money for these babies. So how do you guys like the story so far? How about giving me a thumbs up? Hit that subscribe button if you like the content, and yeah, and then we're good to go, right? So anywho, thanks a lot. Awesome. So the takeaway from this is always carry a firearm. Pepper spray, in my honest opinion, now this is just my opinion, other people may have other opinions, but in my honest opinion, firearms are the best way to go. Now, here's something to think about as well. There's a lot of controversy as to what firearm is the most effective. Now, the bear I shot it with a .44 Magnum. I disabled it. I did not kill it. And then I went into panic mode, and then all bets are off. If that bear had been functional, he would have mauled the living daylights out of me, probably would have killed me. And I might have even shot myself in the process of trying to get the bear. I only had 6 shots. I might have just ran out of bullets, and that was that. And that would have been the end of me. But so what firearm is most effective? Well, the .44 Magnum obviously has enough punch to do the job. I carry a 9mm now, and I'll tell you why. Because years later, I would also work for a outfit that it was a farm. It was a working ranch in California in a little town called King City, and they had a problem with feral hogs, and they hired me to do the farming, but mainly to kill these feral hogs. And so during my nights, I would spend out there in the fields, and we would kill sometimes 30 or 40 of these hogs a night. And so I had a lot of experience in being able to get to these things and kill them. And so one of the methods that we would use is and I had a permit from the game warden too. This was all on the up and up. We were 100% legal. It's what's called a deprivation permit. And you get it from the game warden, and then you're able to go out there and kill as many as you possibly can. You can do it at nighttime with a spotlight as well. So the way we would do this was we had an old Subaru, and we affectionately called it the Blue Dolphin. It was a little blue Subi that to this day I wish I had. It was an awesome car, but neither here nor there. So we'd get in this little Subi, and I'd be driving, and I'd usually have my little 9mm pistol with me. It's a Taurus 92C, which is kind of a copy of the 92F, well, anyways, the Beretta. That's kind of what it was a copy. And if I'm right about this, I think they even manufactured parts for the Beretta at one time for the military guns. And so they sort of just slightly modified the design, and they came out with their own version of it. And that's the one I had. It's a beautiful little gun. Still have it, still use it. Anyways, that's what I would carry. And then I'd have a spotlight. So I'd have my spotlight and my pistol. And what we'd do is we'd spotlight, we'd scan the fields out there. They were in the barley fields. They loved the barley. And we'd see a little brown, patch or a little black patch out there. Sure enough, that would be the pigs. And so then we'd take off in our little Subi, and we'd just go as fast as we could across these fields, jumping over windrows and everything else. So windrows, where they cut the hay and then they pile it up in a row, so that you can come along and bale it. We're just flying down these, going like 60 miles an hour, ba-bam, ba-bam, ba-bam. And then we'd catch up to these pigs, which of course eventually would hear us coming, and they'd take off running. Well, we'd cut them off before they'd get to the end of the fields. And then we'd start running circles around them like the Indians would the wagons, you know what I'm saying? And eventually they'd get confused and they just stop. And then we just open fire on them. And we would just hit them with everything we had. Sometimes I'd have a couple guys in the back. It'd be me in the front. My job was to keep that spotlight on, the pigs. And as soon as you get as many pigs down as you can, you'd shine the spotlight off and you'd look for more. And maybe you'd get back in there and you'd take off and you'd drive and chase some more down. Sometimes you'd run them over. I mean, it was pretty damn brutal, really. It was horrifying, actually. I mean, for somebody that loves animals. But these were feral animals, you got to understand. I mean, they had no business even, they were destroying a lot of the ecology in the area, and especially the crops. So we had to do something. But this little 9mm pistol never failed to down these pigs, big giant pigs. I would shoot these big sows, and I would just drop them. And it with hardball ammo too. I wasn't even using special hollow points. And this was just before the lead ban in California that we were doing this. And later, then they would enact a lead ban, and I would have to special order these Barnes. They weren't X bullets. They were some kind of Defender hollow point bullet, and I would use those to shoot the pigs. But this 9mm was so effective, it just blew my mind. 400-pound sows, it would just drop them. And so I thought in my mind, and I still think that, man, if I can drop a pig with it, and some of these pigs are pretty tough, I can drop a bear with my 9mm. And a 9mm, as you know, has, I have several pistols. My 92C carries 13 rounds. I can put a little larger magazine. I got the 17-round magazine for it. I have a Glock 17, which carries about 16 or 17 rounds. I can't remember. A lot of bullets, man. And the point is you got a lot of firepower to be able to strike that animal as he's coming at you. And so I was in Walmart a while back, and I was buying some fishing flies and stuff like that. And this Karen pulled up next to me, right? You guys know what a Karen is, right? Well, she starts questioning me. She goes, "What you guys gonna do? You guys gonna go fishing?" And like, yeah. I mean, obviously we're buying fishing stuff, right? And I had my buddy from California with me, and I was taking him fishing down the Madison. And so she goes, "Well, you better get some bear spray." And I said, "I don't need bear spray. I'm going to take my gun with me." And she was aghast, and she, of course, started telling me how much easier it was to hit a bear with bear spray than it was with a gun. I asked her, I says, "Well, how many bears have you bear sprayed?" She goes, "Well, how many bears have you shot?" And I says, "I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 dozen." And then she was like, "What? You shot that many?" And of course, it all went downhill from there. But my buddy was laughing like crazy. He just thought that was the funniest thing he ever heard. But we got the hell out of there before another Karen jumped into the fray. And so the takeaway, and that's the other thing with bear spray is, it's dependent upon which way the wind is blowing. You could spray that stuff and it could come back at you. And so that's why I don't really advocate the bear spray. But hey, thanks for sticking with me this long, man. And I think we're going to end the live stream right there. And thanks a lot, and for all your guys' support. And we will see you on the next one.